Imagine a film so raw, so unflinching that it didn't just challenge the boundaries of television, it shattered them. This was a film that dared to show the world behind the locked doors of Britain's youth detention centres, exposing a reality that many wish to keep hidden. It was a story told with such honesty and intensity that it made even the most hardened viewers uncomfortable. The BBC, fearing the public's reaction, locked the film away for 14 long years, hiding it from the very audience it was meant to reach. This version of the film became a secret, its existence almost a myth. Scum, produced for the BBC's Play for Today in 1977, was banned before it could ever be broadcast. Its brutal, unfiltered depiction of life inside a youth detention centre was considered too much for television at the time, too violent, too real, and too close to the bone. The film's title, Socially Condemned Undesirable Misfits, summed up the young men it portrayed. Boys discarded by society, left to fend for themselves in a system that seemed designed to break them. Its honest and unvarnished look at Borstals was deemed too shocking, too dangerous for the public to see. The authorities worried it would spark outrage, or worse, inspire change. But the ban only fueled the film's legend. Rumours spread and bootleg copies circulated among those desperate to see what the BBC had tried to bury. Scum became one of the most notorious unseen films in British history, its reputation growing with every year that it remained hidden. For its creators, Roy Minton and Alan Clarke, the ban was a bitter disappointment. They believed they had made something vital, a film that held up a mirror to a broken system, demanding that the public confront uncomfortable truths about youth, punishment and society's wider failures. Instead of sparking debate and change, the film was silenced. Its powerful images and urgent message were locked away, gathering dust while the problems it exposed continued unchecked. When Scum finally aired in 1991, not too far removed from the Woolfe Report of February that year, the original TV movie forced the British public not only to re-endure the harrowing on-screen depiction of life inside a Borstal, but to face the realities of a broadcaster they trusted that did its utmost to keep the truth from them, perhaps aiding in the eventual boil-over that was Strangeways just 1 year before in 1990. To understand Scum's impact, you need to know what a Borstal was. These were supposed to be reform schools for young offenders, but by the 1970s, they'd become brutal and violent institutions. Survival inside meant navigating a hierarchy ruled by daddies, who were tough for inmates like Carlin, and enforced by harsh officers. Britain at the time was struggling. Unemployment was high, civil unrest rife, and a sense of decline as the post-war boom came to a close lingered in the air. Many Borstal inmates were products of this environment, disenfranchised and written off as scum. Society hoped Borstals would fix them, but of course, it just hid them away. The public had no idea at how bad things really were. Official reports sanitised the truth, and it wouldn't be until February 1991 when the public would find out through the Woolfe Report how broken the system was. Scum set out to expose the violence, the psychological torment and the utter failure of the system. It wasn't just a story, it was an indictment. The original 1977 version of Scum began as a hard-hitting television movie, following three new arrivals, Carlin, Angel and Davis, each forced to confront the institution's cruelty in their own way. The story plunges us into the brutal world of a British Borstal, where hope is scarce and violence is a daily reality. From the moment they step through the gates, the boys are stripped of their identities and thrown into a system designed to break them. Together, these two versions of Scum ensured the story would not be buried, but instead would echo through British culture as a powerful indictment of a broken system. Carlin, determined to survive at any cost, quickly learns that power is everything. Through calculated acts of violence, he rises to become the new daddy of A-Wing, the inmates who rule the others, not by respect, but by fear. The tension in the air is palpable, and every day is a fight for survival. The BBC, unsettled by the play's unflinching realism, banned it before it could air, calling it too bleak and controversial for television audiences. But director Alan Clarke and Roy Minton refused to let their vision be silenced. They believed the story needed to be told, no matter the cost. Undeterred by the ban, Clarke and Minton remade Scum as a feature film in 1979. bringing back Ray Winstone to reprise his iconic role as Carlin. The transition from television to cinema allowed them to push boundaries even further, unshackled by the prior restraints of broadcast standards. The cinema version was more explicit, amplifying the violence, the despair, and the raw emotional impact. Scenes that were once implied on television now played out in full, forcing audiences to confront the harsh realities such as widespread sexual abuse head-on. The result was a film that shocked audiences and critics alike, earning an X certificate for its uncompromising depiction of institutional brutality. The controversy only fueled public curiosity, making Scum a talking point across the country. For the first time, the public saw what the BBC had tried to suppress, a raw, unfiltered look at life inside a Borstal, sparking debates about censorship, youth justice, and the power of film to provoke change, censorship being something which is seemingly more relevant each year. The two versions, TV and film, tell the same story, but each brings its own raw power and unique perspective. While the TV play is intimate and immediate, the film is bolder, angrier, and more stylised. The TV play's gritty, documentary-like style immerses viewers in everyday reality of the inmates, while the film's heightened visuals and relentless pace make it impossible to look away from the brutal violence and injustice. Even the hardiest of adults will struggle to watch through the infamous greenhouse scene. Comparing the 1977 and 1979 versions of Scum is like seeing two shades of the same nightmare. The TV version is claustrophobic and raw, its violence sudden and shocking. The film remake is freed from the TV limits, is more graphic and relentless. Carlin's rise to power is bloodier and the fights more punishing. Ray Winstone's performance in this film is iconic, with rage and intelligence barely contained, cementing himself as a British film icon at just 22 years old and still featuring in projects today. The supporting cast is harder and the officers more sadistic, Ray later coming out to add that every slap was real. Both versions immerse viewers in despair, but the TV play whispers its horrors while the film screams them. One tried to start a conversation and the other refused to let it be silenced. Together, they're a double-edged indictment of a failed system. The most infamous and harrowing scene in Scum is of course the rape of Davis in the prison greenhouse, a moment that stands as a stark, methodical act of cruelty. It's a sequence that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll, and it's the reason I made this video, and it's not just for its brutality, but the cold precision with which it unfolds. The greenhouse, once a place of growth and life, becomes a stage for unspeakable violence, its weathered glass and decaying plants mirroring the destruction of innocence. This scene is present in both the original television version and the later film, but in both it's almost unbearable to watch. The pain and humiliation etched on Davis's face, the cries that fill the air, and the sense of utter helplessness all combine to create a moment that is deeply disturbing. What makes it even more chilling is the lack of chaos. The violence is not frenzy but deliberate, carried out with a terrifying calm and even a sense of joy. Around them the system turns a blind eye, with Mr. Sands smiling as he watches, waiting to intervene when Jesse, Chambers and Smith had finished with Davis, reinforcing the sense of institutional complicity. And Alan Clarke's camera refuses to look away, instead holds steady, forcing the audience to confront the horror head-on. There's no dramatic music, just an unflinching gaze that demands we bear witness. The purpose of this scene was never to shock for its own sake, rather it was to expose a grim reality that was too often hidden from public view, a reality that many in authority preferred to ignore or deny. Sexual assault was a known but rarely acknowledged part of Borstal life, a weapon used to dominate and break the spirits of the vulnerable. For many young inmates it was a constant threat lurking in the shadows of every day, and you can understand why these boys, if making it out alive, didn't want to relive these traumatic and humiliating years, discussing it with friends or family therapists, and so the secret stayed buried. The filmmakers were adamant about including this scene, refusing to sanitize or gloss over the truth. They believed that to omit it would be to participate in the same silence that allowed such abuses to continue. The BBC ultimately banned the television version of Scum, citing it as too explicit, too hopeless, and too disturbing for broadcast. The controversy only underscored the uncomfortable truths the film was trying to reveal, and in my opinion makes the BBC complicit in allowing these abuses to continue unchecked and following a pattern of their recent behaviour. But to cut the scene would have been to betray the film's very purpose, to shine a light on the darkest corners of the system, no matter how painful that might be. And so the greenhouse scene remains to this day one of the most powerful and unflinching indictments of an institutional failure in British cinema, a moment that demands we remember and never look away. So if the greenhouse scene shows inmate cruelty, then Davis's resulting suicide exposes the institution's ultimate failure. Davis is vulnerable from the start, bullied by inmates, ignored or berated by officers. His mental health deteriorates. His pleas for help after the greenhouse scene dismissed, and after one final humiliation from Mr. Greaves, Davis opts out. Seemingly changing his mind for a brief moment, he reaches for the immediate emergency button in his cell, but the staff ignore him. Alone and helpless, he painfully bleeds out through the night. The discovery of his body is a quiet, devastating moment, a damning indictment of the system's indifference. Davis's death sparks a riot among the inmates, a desperate and furious response to years of abuse. The riot is chaotic and futile, but the system crushes it without mercy. The message is bleak, nothing changes, and the cycle of violence continues. Davis's story is the heart of Scum's tragedy. It's a warning about what happens when the institutions abandon the vulnerable. Before Scum, most people thought Borstals were tough but fair. Official reports and old films painted a sanitised picture, discipline, reform, and maybe a second chance. The idea of systematic abuse or officers ignoring rape and suicide was just unthinkable. Scum shattered those illusions, confronting viewers with ugly and uncomfortable truths. The violence was real, the characters complex, and the system exposed. Writer Ray Minton drew from real experience of over 100 interviews from inmates and staff alike, grounding this film in authenticity. Scum bypassed official narratives, giving voice to the voiceless, and for the first time the public saw what really happened behind closed doors. It forced a long overdue conversation about the reality of youth detention. Scum's impact went beyond shock. It fueled debate about youth justice and censorship. The Borstal system was already fading, but Scum made its failures impossible to ignore. Politicians and activists pointed to the film as proof that reform was urgent. The conversation shifted towards rehabilitation and mental health, not just punishment. The BBC's ban sparked fierce debate about censorship and the broadcaster's duty to inform. Many saw the ban as political cowardice, an attempt to protect the establishment. Ironically, the controversy only made Scum more influential, a symbol of artistic freedom and the fight to speak truth to power. Its legacy both a call for reform and a warning about silencing uncomfortable truths. Looking back at Scum, it's easy to focus on the drama of censorship, especially as it seems to represent a harsh prediction of the intense increase in riots through the 80s and 90s, ultimately culminating in a reform that was too late for a generation of youth. But the real lesson is about facing uncomfortable realities. Censorship has always existed, but Scum was a rare case of state institutions suppressing a vital critique being so visible to the public. Today, it's harder to silence such stories, thankfully. Media is everywhere, and the truth finds a way out. If Scum were made today, it would be leaked online within hours. The film reminds us why some truths are shocking and why some want to hide them. But it also calls us to have the hard conversations and to resist retreating into denial. Sometimes you have to see the scum to understand the world, and that's the uncomfortable power of art that refuses to look away. If you've made it this far in the video, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch my first. Despite being around such a dark topic, it genuinely means a lot to me. If you do like this kind of content, do stick around, drop a like, let me know and say down below so I can carry on telling these stories. I am new to this, so please do give me any advice, pointers, things you need me to change. But otherwise, take care and I'll see you again soon.